In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to In Full Zoom. I'm your host, Nestor Lecanto. And this week, we're going to talk a little bit about internet gaming. And we've got with us Matt Shearing, who is the CEO of OneCode, an Australian company that just launched an internet interchange and gaming hub in Guam. He's going to tell us all about that. And we've got our own Ken Sinicolas, part of our digital team here at KOM, and also an avid local gamer who founded a local esports league. Welcome, gentlemen.
Morning. Thank you very much, Nestor. Good to be here.
All right. So let's set the table here, Matt, and tell us what is OneCode and how did you guys get started?
Yeah, so OneCode are we're an international carrier. So we operate an international network throughout Asia Pacific with a big focus on low latency, high performance networks. So one of the big things that we found, we're based out of Australia, but one of the big issues that we identified currently in Asia Pacific is that there is a lot of these disparate areas and regions, and most of our data is hosted in some of these regions, but there's no like central meeting place for data in Asia Pacific. And so if you're trying to connect from one place to another, your latencies are normally quite bad, right? Like particularly if you're going a fair bit further away. That never used to matter as much, but particularly in today's world, there's a lot more applications that are becoming latency sensitive. They're becoming quite data sensitive, and we saw an opportunity there. And our focus is gaming, right? So what we've effectively done is we've said we want to build the most high performance network we can throughout Asia Pacific for everyone's internet and telecommunications to run over. What's the problem that we can solve to make sure we build that the best? And we're all gamers within our organization. A couple of us have run gaming organizations before back in the day. And we've also lived on Australia's East Coast, which is notorious for international connectivity. So for us, that was the need that really needed solving. And we thought, well, if we can solve that need, we've effectively solved the problem for everyone else. So we focused on solving gaming first, and Guam is the perfect location for it. And that's why we're doing so much in Guam.
All right. That leads into my next question. I was looking at your website and it says OneCode, in a regional first, is deploying server and data center capacity in Guam to level the playing field and radically improve real-time internet applications in Asia Pacific. What does that mean?
So I'll give you a practical example because that's probably the best way to frame it. So, and I'll use gaming because that's what we're focusing on right now. And then I'll kind of show how that moves on to other applications. So right now, if you're a gamer, you'll jump on your game of choice and you'll connect to a server. Now, most of these servers are located in like the largest city in your country. So for us here in Australia, it's Sydney. For areas like Japan, it's Tokyo, Singapore, Malaysia, generally it's Kuala Lumpur. A lot of them do actually connect to Singapore too, Philippines, Manila, so on and so forth. And when a lot of these games launch, these publishers will generally also get a whole bunch of other servers in other cities. So people can kind of be as close to the servers as they possibly can. Now, the big problem with that's good for about a week when you first launch your game. The problem is, like everything, we're all human. People start getting a little bit sick of the game after about a week and they want a break. And so the population levels will start to drop off. And what invariably happens is people who are looking to play the game still, their time to find a match will go up. So in a first person shooter game, their time to queue up for a match will go up. In a massively multiplayer game, generally the population will dip very significantly. And all of a sudden it's like a ghost town, and no one can find anyone to game with. And what then happens is a lot of these publishers and gaming companies get caught in these feedback loops where the user population dips, so queue times go up, so more people get fed up and leave, so queue times go up even further. And so, if you're one of these games, you've deployed all these assets around Asia Pacific and the world to serve your user base, but you're very quickly finding that a lot of them aren't needed anymore. And not only that, your user experience is being impacted. Your player base is going down, and it's basically very hard for you to continue to make money on your game. What we're doing with Guam is, if you look at Guam on a map, and I'm sure everyone knows exactly where you guys are on a map. it's kind of smack bang in the middle of Asia Pacific, particularly if you take into account North America as well. And up until very recently, there were some cables landing in Guam, but there wasn't a lot. Now there are a lot more cables landing in Guam. RTI have just built a nice big cable between Japan, Australia, and Guam. And there's been a couple more announced. So Google have now announced a cable. I think Facebook have announced a cable as well. So there's a lot more infrastructure coming. And we looked at that and we said, well, if we want to solve that problem, because that's a big problem and a lot of people are feeling it, not just the gaming companies, but the gamers themselves, right? Because it impacts their performance. And there's about 1.5 billion gamers in the Asia Pacific region. So it's a problem that applies to like a very significant chunk of humanity within the world. If we want to solve that problem, the best place to solve it is on Guam, because Guam is relatively equidistant from a number of these countries. The latency figures are more than serviceable to basically everywhere throughout the region. And we can get connectivity there and take people's data there a lot easier than we used to be. And that's effectively why we chose Guam and why we're building a hub there, because it really is like a level playing field. It's a place that we can all agree, let's meet there, let's host our servers there. And all of a sudden, instead of hitting, say, 5 million people with your server, you can hit 1.5 billion people with your server and everyone can still have a good experience. So it's orders of magnitude greater than the current situation. And these companies are also not having to pay anywhere near as much to deploy everywhere. And your users are able to play with people from all sorts of different nations and countries, which I think is great. Now, the upshot of that is once we've done that, you can apply that to a whole bunch of other areas of our business life and our daily life. So the same reason Guam is great for gaming makes Guam great for, private international networks, for example, makes it great for cloud applications with multinational companies. It makes it great for even locals, right? Like a lot of this is going to be, Guam is going to go from being someone that I think gets shafted quite a lot and aren't included. And Ken can probably talk more to that, but aren't included in a lot of the regional tournaments and goings on to being the focal point and the center. And actually the best served. So I think that hopefully that answers your question, Nesta.
Yes, it does.
But that's brilliant.
Yeah.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to get more into the other applications for this, but I wanted to give Ken an opportunity, because he speaks gaming much better than I do, to jump in here and ask you some questions about gaming as well. I think you're on mute, Ken.
Sorry, there we go. Am I working now? Should be good.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I think he covered a lot of my concerns but like he said, for people who live on Guam who want to game, like we have to connect to, we have to connect to like a Singapore server or like a California server or Hong Kong. And because of the distance and whatever ISP we have, that ping, that difference in latency can be big, right? Like, it could be like 155 milliseconds while somebody who's playing on the same server from Singapore has 20 milliseconds, right? Like a significant lower ping. And I liken that to like being in a race and, the official shoots the gun to start and one person hears the gun, a half a second faster or whatever. That is what that's what the ping differential provides for like local people on Guam. Like we're always playing at a disadvantage. And, because of our location, because we can't enter these bigger, larger scale tournaments that are held in Singapore or Hong Kong or the Philippines or whatnot, the opportunity to compete at this higher level for people on Guam it's just not there yet. But I believe OneCode will really solve this type of issue, especially if publishing houses like Riot or Valve, like who make games like League of Legends or Dota, which are very popular on Guam, if they would go ahead and, purchase a server purchase a server on Guam so that we'd be able to connect to those. I think though there's a large implication there because Guam is kind of like that central hub. It should be the central hub for gaming in that region. It should be able to be that fair server that connects contestants from the Philippines to Australia, like especially with like Triton Esports, the UOG collegiate esports team. When they want to scrim, they have to scrimmage at a huge disadvantage. And it makes sense that we should be able to scrimmage with the schools in Australia, like the colleges there. But because of the difference in ping currently, we're not able to do that. So hopefully this one code solution does solve that type of gaming and growth issue for the esports community. But also, like Matt said, it also solves a lot of other revenue generating opportunities for the island in general. When we think of like data centers or different type of internet-based types of opportunities there are, with Guam as that physical location and central hub, it might open up all these different jobs or sources of revenue for local people. So I'm excited to see how that develops in the future.
Yeah, Matt, you got any comments on that?
Oh, look, I'd completely agree, right? I think Guam has a lot of similarities for me to Hong Kong and Singapore, but we all know how much they have hubs they are within the internet infrastructure and data. And what makes them great is they are kind of like central points, right? I think Guam is almost better in many respects than both of them in the way that the latency figures work. And also in the way that the infrastructure is going. So I think there's some huge potential on the island. I wouldn't be surprised to be seeing that the information technology sector booms very significantly there because of it. And, like the network we're building is all, because Ken, you mentioned that sometimes you can, if someone's on one ISP, someone's on another ISP, and you can take maybe 155 milliseconds to get to Hong Kong. A lot of that vagary within the region is because a lot of carriers, that what they'll do is they'll route on what's called lowest cost routing. So basically wherever it costs them the least to send the data, that's the track that your data will travel. And sometimes it's not a straight line, right? Sometimes it's, it could go over to LA first and then hop over to Hong Kong, or it could drop down to Singapore and then go over to India or somewhere and then come across to a server. So what we've tried to do really differently is route for best path routing, which basically gets things where it needs to go the quickest. And I think that's going to continue. I think more and more people are going to do that once, as the infrastructure builds up on Guam.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier, the other uses for this, financial trading, data processing, conference hosting. Can you elaborate on those?
Yeah, well, I think we're talking on Zoom right now, right? And one of the big things with business now, particularly in this COVID era, is that everyone's decentralized. Everyone's running in different areas. And what will normally happen is that if you, for example, spin up a video call, it will pick a server somewhere near your region, right? But I'm not even sure what server we're talking on right now, but it could be somewhere in Hong Kong, or it could be somewhere in LA, or it could be somewhere in Singapore. And it's very rarely equal for all the parties on the call. Whereas the great thing about Guam is that Guam almost becomes like a default. So if your system isn't sure where to stick a server or spin something up or start a Zoom call, the safe default would be Guam, because it's relatively equidistant from everyone in APAC. And I think that's going to be true for many, many different things. I mean, the one thing we're starting to see a lot of is multinational companies. So you've got, you may have a company with an office in LA, an office in Tokyo, and an office in Sydney. Now, and they may want a private network between them to make sure that, internally they've got their own network and everyone's got access to their data, but no one else has access to the data. What typically happens is that data will be hosted somewhere like LA. So the LA people will get amazing connectivity to their own network. And the office in Hong Kong and Sydney will be whinging all the time about the fact that there's dropouts, things take so long to load. There's all these other issues that they come up with. With something like Guam, we can effectively say to people, hey, how about you consider hosting your server that runs your backend in Guam, And then we'll make sure that you've got really good latency between your offices and it all runs on a private network. And that's like a practical example of a way that you can take something that we've built for gaming, we've built to gaming spec, and you can apply it to some kind of enterprise application. One of the other lower hanging fruits is high frequency trading. I think so much of that comes down to latency, and I think there's definitely some things that companies can do there to use the Guam network to their benefit. So, but look, I think we're probably thinking about 5% of the applications. I mean, my big, the thing that really excites me is building this and then being able to say to everyone, hey, this is just a blank canvas. You build what you want on it. I think we're going to see some really, really interesting things.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
Yeah, exactly. What was that, Ken?
Sorry, to piggyback on what Matthew was saying, like, when we consider Guam, like how it's the like a commercial hub of the Asia Pacific region, we want all this manufacturing and physical goods to go through this region, right? Like it's just a central hub. It's very strategically important in a number of different facets, whether it be a military importance or commercial importance. And I think what Matthew's really trying to stress here is that the intangible importance of having that physical hub here for data, right? And just transferring, like, whatever the application may be, business, gaming, whatever it may be, like the actual physical region of Guam is important because it's just equidistant from all these different surrounding areas. And because of that, like, that there's the sky's the limit when it comes to application and opportunity. And it's just whether or not people, whether it be people from Guam or outside investors, to think outside that box and figure out how they can capitalize on that possible revenue stream.
Yeah, and Australia has recognized Guam as for its strategical geographic location, because we've had what we call the old Australian cable station. It's located up in Upper Tumon, overlooking our tourist district. And that's been there since, I think, the 60s or 70s. So Australia recognized long ago the value of Guam in terms of geography for cable. Matt, what do you see as the potential for that going forward? For more cables to be landed here, for more hub traffic, or what do you see going forward?
Yeah, look, I think like the cables go where the data goes, right? And generally, it's kind of like building a highway. So you'll generally, or a railway, you'll build to a supposed demand, and then you'll build it, and then you'll see what comes. Like it's very encouraging for me to be seeing. I think there's been 2 new cables announced in the last month that will be coming from the United States. They're dropping in Guam, and then they're continuing on to places like Singapore. And I think that's only going to continue. If you go, there's a website called Submarine Cable Map. And if you pull that up, you'll be able to see all the submarine cables within the world. What I'd suggest is look at places like Hong Kong, places like Singapore, the amount of cables that are dropping in there right now, because there is so much data transiting through there. And I don't think it's unreasonable in the slightest to think that Guam is going to become similar, because it really is. I mean, you guys are the connection point between really 3 continents. So Australia, Asia, and North America. And that latency factor, as we start doing a lot more latency intensive tasks like cloud gaming, like VR, like streaming, and the many, many other things that people are going to think of, I think it's only going to increase Guam's importance. So I think the next 5 to 10 years is probably going to be a bit of a gold rush for infrastructure there on Guam. And I think a lot of people, like particularly local Guamese, am I saying that right? It is Guamese, isn't it? Guamanians. Apologies. Like I think there's a huge opportunity, right? There is a massive opportunity to look at this and go, okay, well, this is where the puck is moving. This is where things are going. What can we do here? What can we build to take advantage of this incoming wave of data, because our data needs aren't decreasing, right? The data needs in the world are only increasing, and it's only going to continue.
I have a question for Matthew. You mentioned how
the local government. Go ahead, Ken. I'm sorry.
Oh no, Matthew, you mentioned how it's important for gaming publishers to buy on into these different servers for this prospective region. And since you've applied your first service here on the island, have you gotten that type of positive feedback from some of these popular gaming publishers about purchasing your servers for use in their games?
Yeah. So we've got a couple of customers who are deploying right now. One of them's active. A couple more are, like we have just switched the whole thing on, but a couple of more in their final stages of deployment. They're really excited. One of them operates servers in one of the largest games in the world. I can't name specifics at the moment, but they're excited. And after this call in a couple of hours, I've got a call with one of the largest publishers in the world, and we're going to discuss Guam, going to discuss a similar thing. So there is interest. I definitely would say that it is as much about educating these companies in what the Guam advantage is as much as anything else, because it really is, it's a new concept. Until now, the default has been lots of hyper local server deployments in many, many different countries. And I think, old habits die hard, and our job is to present that to these companies and start building some case studies so we can show people, hey, this is actually a better way of doing things. This should be the default for the region. Whether you're a small publisher or a large publisher, whenever you're launching a game, you should be defaulting to Guam as basically your back end, and then having some local servers in the region. So there's definitely interest, and I can only see that continuing to increase.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Matt, is there anything that the local government can do to help facilitate this industry, or should they just get out of the way?
I'd never say get out of the way. I think there's definitely things that the local government could do. I think there's going to be a lot of infrastructure requirements, right? Because it's basically like, once the data comes in, the infrastructure builds up around it. So you're going to have data center companies looking at Guam now and saying, okay, I think we may need to be here. Once you've got the data center companies, you've got all the managed service providers, you've got the international IT companies, you've got, and while, yes, we're all used to working in a COVID environment, people are operating more decentralized, people still like to have boots on the ground. I mean, we have an employee on Guam right now, right? And we're very passionate about that we wanted to employ someone locally. So we're not just a company that's in Australia and doing things from afar. We want to make sure we're contributing to the local economy and building local jobs. And I think there's going to be a lot more of that. So I'm not entirely sure what that would look like from a local government level. And yes, like if they could make it as easy as possible for companies to come and invest their money in Guam, I think that would be a great first step. But I'm sure there are plenty of other ways too that they can foster and encourage that growth as it continues.
All right. We got a couple of minutes left. I wanted to get, if you guys have any final thoughts, let me start with you, Ken.
Oh, nothing. I just think it's a great step. It's a huge step, and it's kind of going under the radar. I believe, in my opinion, I think from the gaming perspective, of course, it's very it's groundbreaking for us. It will open a ton of opportunities. In terms of like competition and just being able to play at a more competitive level for players around the island. So I'm happy for that. But I'm even more excited to see what else the application brings to the island. Like there's an opportunity. We always talk about a post-tourism lifestyle. Like, what can the island do to bring in more sources of revenue? And this is the opportunity for people out there looking for a new idea to kind of spark that ingenuity and come up with something that the island's typically not known for. So I think it's a great thing that Matthew's doing. Awesome.
All right, Matt, we'll give you the final word.
Look, I'd just say we're just a catalyst, right? And we're standing on the shoulders of giants ourselves. There's a lot of people who've put a lot of work into building the infrastructure to get to Guam, and that's going to continue. But if there are people out there that want to do something with this, they see what's going on and they want to get involved. They think they've got an idea or a business plan that may work. However we can help, right? Like, we're really, really passionate about seeing Guam thrive. We're putting down roots there and we're in it for the long haul. And I'm just excited, right? And I think people on Guam should be really excited because the future is looking super bright.
All right. Matt Shearing, the CEO of OneCode, and our own Ken Nicholas, digital team here at KUAM. I'm Nestor Lecanto. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you again next week on In Full Zoom.
In Full Zoom is presented to you by Calvo Enterprises, Inc.